For this module, we studied the codes and conventions of a thriller to understand what would you expect to find to make a thriller. For example, how the sound and characters create suspense and make the ingredients to the thrillers. Our thriller mostly contrasts with the types of thrillers we analysed. We analysed films like Jaws, Seven, Red Eye and others that fall into the category of action crime thrillers. All these are all action crime thrillers as they are opposite types of thrillers which we wanted to create, which was a psychological thriller and the psychological concepts of the children's mind. The narrative of our thriller is about an insane child who has had a rough childhood. She destroys her toys to take her aggression out, but as she grows older it just isn't her toys that she hurts, it's people too. This contrasts to the other thrillers we analysed because the stereotypical killer is mostly a man who is unseen to the audience, and using a child as the killer, it goes away from the idea of a stereotypical child who's sweet and innocent. Our music in our thriller is quite creepy, as it's children singing and it echoes, but then it turns upbeat and fast, which still is pretty unusual because it is quite out of sync and off key. This is similar to some of the music we looked at in the thrillers, for example Seven, because it creates tension yet still fits the theme of being insane and weird sounding. The camera angles we used were similar to Jaws in the way it was from the killer's point of view. We showed this by using low angle shots and bird's eye shots, making the victim and the toys look less important and the killer have more authority. For our captions, we didn't use normal text graphics because, like the other thrillers we analysed, the captions have scratching effects over the film. This was similar to Seven. However, we did really like this idea because the scratching related to the child's handwriting. We didn't want to use normal text effects over the top because we wanted variety to present our captions to be differently. So we used over the shoulder shots of a child's hands and our characters writing our names out and drawing pictures, but as the process goes on, the pictures get ripped up and get more scribbled out, showing her being more aggressive. We chose our thrillers because, like I said before, we wanted to do something different, and we thought it would be effective presenting a psychological thriller, and the idea of our child character contrasts with the normal stereotypical killer. Also, because children are sweet and innocent, we thought it would create more of a psychotic element to our thriller. We did a brainstorm of all our ideas that we wanted to include and exclude. For example, things like children as ghosts. We thought that make it a bit more horror-like. However, we did want twisted things that would be a fear factor. So we had ideas of children being killers, but we also wanted to add things and features that would scare our target audience, which was the 15 above, like clowns or anything else that was creepy. We decided, though, we thought having a twisted psychotic character was enough to create a small fear factor to make our thriller a bit disturbing, yet still fit in with the thriller criteria. Yes, we did decide to do another type of thriller which fitted into this category of a psychological thriller. This is because we haven't looked at any of these themes, and we chose this purely because our group wasn't exactly interested in the subgenre thrillers like crime, investigation or action. Our narrative and our introduction to the thriller is linear and it goes straight to the point. However, there are some interruptions because of the opening titles. We use them in the middle of the sequence to create suspense so the audience can build up until they find out the title of the film. However, looking at the plan of our film, the treatment is normally linear. At the beginning, it is her as a child, then has the present day shots of our character, but still keeps flashbacks throughout the film to remind the audience that why she is in this insane state. We made it a linear narrative in the opening introduction sequence because we didn't want to make it confusing to our audience. We just wanted to show that our character is psychotic and to show her childhood in this opening sequence. The codes and conventions we decided to use was a transformed city because this theory is set in an urban environment and our film is set in a small town on the outskirts of New York and already placed. It also falls into this theory because the characters used were ordinary. They didn't expect to be involved with situations that happened, the murders, because they have normal lifestyles and normal jobs. It turns extraordinary when our main character begins the murders. I would not expect a child and a successful businesswoman to be responsible for these murders. Another theory uses partial vision because our audience only really see the crimes being committed. They do not understand fully why. However, throughout the film, due to the relationships between the characters, this is revealed. For example, Seth got angry at Meg. We begin to understand why she did this. This also relates to the concealment and protection idea, but the protection element mostly, because again, we do not know why, but it is eventually revealed. Concealment also comes into this because we know a murder is going to happen from the atmosphere of the scene and the rage and aggression that builds up within our main characters. However, we do not know when exactly or how. An example of this in this scene is Seska's office, and she has a disagreement with Meg, but Meg doesn't obey Seska. We know something bad will happen, but we do not know the exact moment when. Another theory that could be used is the exotic, because of how the setting is so ordinary and how our main character is very ordinary as well. However, her killings are partly the exotic because they are unexpected and do not fit in with the life of a successful businesswoman career that this ordinary character has. Question and answer could also be a theory used. This pops up at the beginning and introduction of the film. We see a child who aggressively destroys our toys, and we are asking the questions: who is she? What background is she from? Why is she destroying her toys? Then at the start it goes on to see why her as a mature adult and begin to relate the child to the adult as we introduced into her lifestyle and understand what her personality is really like. In the filming process, we planned storyboards of how we were going to show our introduction of the thriller. This included different ranges of shot angles and editing techniques like captions and effects. We also wrote up a shooting script, which was a brief version of each shot and what effects we would use, when the music will come in, when we change setting, and when the shot angles will change. We then transferred this onto a storyboard visually so we could interpret how to perform these shots and discuss if anything needed changing in case some of them were complicated. The most obvious camera angles we used were from the doll's and the killer's point of view from the beginning, because it shows the main character and her importance. The rest of our shots were hideaway shots, like we were looking into her life, and part of the subjects would be in the way of the camera. Also, another shot we used was a long shot and a medium shot, because it was easier to show the narrative of what our character was doing, and we could use close-ups on important parts. I do think our opening sequence was quite successful in ways. For example, I really like the introduction as we get a long shot of the door, and this gives us an introduction to who the character is and where the setting is, because the Seska's name is above the door. And I also like the camera angles at the very beginning because I think it looks effective and well thought out, and not only viewing from one person's perspective. I also really like the techniques we used for our captions, how we used a little girl's handwriting. It gave a variety of ways to present our titles, and it was individual. It also seemed quite more realistic because we use a child's handwriting as to relate to our main character, and the handwriting gets more aggressive as it progresses, which shows our character getting more insane. Ways I do not think it was quite successful was, personally, I thought some of the shots were very messy. For example, in one shot it wobbles in the slightest, however you don't really notice it, but it affects the continuity for the next shot. Also, continuity is a big problem in another shot because a light is switched on and then it is turned off in the other, so this affects the lighting. However, we did overcome this by putting the shots from the part where she throws the doll in black and white, so you don't really notice the lighting change. Using it in black and white can show her going through her evil phase, therefore it isn't as noticeable. However, I do think the continuity was a big problem for us in a few shots, but we resolved this by placing our opening titles in between these just to make sure it flows better. I do also like the music in our piece. I think it does work well, especially at the beginning, because it has a black screen and the creepy music comes on, which creates a disturbing atmosphere. Also, how the shot relates to the lyrics, and examples of the lyrics is "We all fall down." This is the shot of the doll falling down. I also really like the other piece of music we use, "Ring Around the Roses," because it creates a really good atmosphere and it relates to the children, and we are using children characters. This then allows the audience to relate the children's voices to the aggressive behaviour, so we can get an idea of our character's personality and what the film might be about. The other piece of music I think is successful because it's less creepy, however it's still very childlike because it has sounds of high-pitched notes, yet these are used used differently. It speeds up in places and creates tension and suspense as the music gets faster and as the story gets more intense and weird. No, we didn't decide to follow the stereotypical conventions of heroes and killers, and we did not have a male killer. This is just because we wanted our filler to contrast, and because our killer is a child girl, it is very unexpected. One, for the fact it is a girl, and mostly children, boys get up to more mischief and would be expected to be more rebellious. Also because it is a child, and it isn't really morally right to use a child as a murderer. However, we wanted our thriller to be unexpected and sort of like a juxtaposition, using a sweet girl, stereotypical child as a killer against something bad, unexpected and negative.